In the early 2010s, Greg Popovich and the beautiful game San Antonio Spurs revolutionized the game of basketball both on and off the court. On the court, their emphasis on ball movement and team play inspired basketball fans across the world. Off the court, though, the Spurs popularized a practice that has been slowly and methodically killing the NBA for a decade plus. That practice is load management. Load management, or DNP rest as it was known back in the Spurs time, is a philosophical approach to athletics training derived from the concepts of load and load capacity. Load in sports training is defined as all the physical stress you endure as a result of your sport, practice, games, training, etc. And load capacity is the amount of load or physical stress a player is able to endure prior to an injury occurring. Your physical limit, essentially. Using those two definitions, you can probably infer the definition of load management: managing the physical stress a player experiences in order to make sure they stay under their load capacity. This philosophy has been, to be quite frank with you, the bane of NBA fandom literally since its inception. You yourself have probably been bitten by load management once or twice. You get all excited to watch player X play player Y, and then out of nowhere it's announced one of or both of the players gotta sit out of the game. Sometimes they don't even try to hide their reasoning for it. They just say, hey, the player's gotta rest, hence DNP rest. This scenario happens day in and day out in the modern NBA. You just never know when the load management flu is gonna hit a player on yours or the opposing team, and this makes it very difficult to get excited for games. But I'm not exactly stating anything new here. This is probably the 100,000th video complaining about the NBA's load management issue. NBA pundits, fans, commentators, and retired players alike have all been unanimously clamoring for the NBA to make a rule change outlawing this practice. There are even academic studies out there that show how this load management flu epidemic has damaged the NBA on a macro scale. Clearly, load management has been hurting the public's love for the game. However, due to this practice being for the purpose of player safety and giving us a better chance of getting the best basketball possible come playoff time, we have tried our best to put up with it. Some more than others, that's for sure. But I would say for the most part, the NBA public has tried to make its peace with load management because we were told allowing players to sit out now is going to help prevent them from missing games in the future. We now know that this was far from the truth, about as far from the truth as you can possibly be. NBA players, since load management has been implemented league-wide, have missed more games due to injury than ever before. This can be seen in the number of games missed by NBA players per year. From the 90s to the mid-2010s, there was a gradual increase of about 5%, and from the mid-2010s to now, we've seen a much steeper increase. In fact, just from last year to this year, we've seen almost a 40% increase in the number of games missed. It's so annoying and concerning to see so many players you enjoy watching get hurt, but to me it's also quite confusing. Something smells fishy, no? This doesn't make quite a lot of sense. How has the advancements in health and medicine, the improvement of NBA facilities, and the implementation of load management coincided with a substantial decline in overall player durability? I mean, I would understand no change, new science that makes sense logically but doesn't work practically, story as old as time. But the fact that players now are more injury prone than ever despite having better facilities and playing less than ever, I don't know, it seems very counterintuitive. Well, there have been quite a few theories thrown about, two of the most widely accepted being that players' physical loads are higher and their load capacities are lower. Let's start with that first one. Players' loads are higher, meaning the game is more physically strenuous than ever before. Well, that's pretty much a fact. For all the old heads out there that just paused the video to vehemently object to that statement in the comment section, I am not saying the game is more physical now. That's obviously not true. I'm saying the game is more physically demanding of players now than it ever has been. Due to the three-point line, NBA players specifically on defense just have more ground to cover. According to certain sources, NBA teams run over 200 miles more per season now than they did in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. And when you run more, that means there are more opportunities to get injured, hence the rise in physical loads and missed games. The second theory for the increase in injuries, that players' load capacities are lower than ever before, well, that stems from a more widely debated topic on the overexertion of child athletes. This issue has been raised up in pretty much every sport, whether that's Little League managers skirting past pitch counts on child pitchers, parents of elementary school kids allowing them to play tackle football despite the sport's body relationship with head injuries, or in the context of basketball, kids being subject to 4 or 5 games per day in AAU tournaments. This theory posits that the brunt of injuries that occur now come about due to athletes being overworked as kids, essentially leading them to come into the league with a body age significantly older than their actual birth certificate age. Both of these theories I do think carry some weight in the why do people get injured now more than ever discussion. And honestly, if you spoke with me a few months ago, maybe even a few weeks ago, I would have said these two theories are the answers, the main culprits of the state of modern basketball. And that honestly left me feeling a bit down. Really? Because if these two things are the culprit, then there is no fix for the injury issue. The only fix to the game being too physically strenuous for players is to fundamentally change the game. And as much high hopes as I have for that occurring, the odds of it happening are unlikely. The only way to fix players being overworked as kids is to societally change the way we parent our kids. And if that wasn't unlikely enough to occur for you, we would also have to wait out the whole generation of players that are already overworked. Oh, that's no biggie. So we only have to change society and wait 20 or so years before we get a player that can stay healthy for a full 82 game season. Awesome, start the clock. We'll have the NBA back in no time. It was honestly a very bleak picture. It almost felt like I was accepting the doomed fate of the sport I love. But then I thought about it some more, and some more after that, and I eventually came to the conclusion that I think these two theories are almost a non-factor for our current injury issue. I do believe that they play some role in the recent increase in injuries for sure, but I think the assertion that these two theories are the main causes is flat out wrong. Like for the first theory, are games more physically taxing right now than they were back in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s? I mean, that's just a fact. But remember our definition for load. It wasn't just the physical stress your body is under from playing games. It's the total amount of physical stress your body is under due to everything that has to do with the sport. That isn't just the physical demand from games. That also includes practice and training. So the argument that the physical demand of basketball has gotten too high kind of falls flat when you take into account players in years past practiced and trained substantially more than players do right now. It kind of all evens out. For the second theory, does players being overworked as kids affect their health as adults? I would say yes. There are several studies out there that show that professional athletes who were multi-sport athletes as kids tend to be less injury prone than those who focused on one sport for their whole lives, due to the latter group wearing out their bodies more from doing the same types of movements over and over again. So there is some correlation between the overworking of kids and their health as adults. But do kids really play more basketball now than they did back then? I think they play more organized basketball, that's no question. But if you listen to any retired NBA player podcast, there is one commonality between all of them. Those brothers was outside. Those boys was playing pickup games every chance they got outside, most likely on concrete or asphalt, which is even harder on the joints than hardwood. This is less definitive than my issues with the first theory, but still, I would posit that NBA players have played a relatively constant amount of amateur games over the years. It's just that more games now are organized and more games back then were more street ball. So if both of these theories are incorrect, then what is correct? What is the reason for the recent increase in injuries? Well, I think the answer is actually, I'm sure you already guessed it, load management itself. Yes, the thing that's taken the NBA by storm, the thing that has been implemented by almost every team league-wide to increase player safety, is actually the thing putting player safety in the most jeopardy. And the main reason I think this is because of one logical fallacy I have found in the load management versus load capacity argument. It's that the purveyors of load management treat a player's load capacity like it's static, like it doesn't change. Load management operates under the assumption that every person has a set limit for their body, and when they reach it, their chances of getting an injury skyrockets. When that is absolutely not true. Everyone can increase their load capacity. That's called training. You run to increase your ability to sustain cardiovascular stress. You lift weights to increase your ability to sustain muscular stress. The whole philosophy behind physical fitness is putting your body under a load in the present to increase its load capacity in the future. And yet the NBA as a whole has decided that the best way to keep players healthy during the most physically demanding seasons in the history of basketball is to have them practice, train, and play less often and less intensely so they don't reach their physical limit. But the only way for you to get stronger and increase your physical limit is to reach your physical limit. This isn't just a belief held by me. The trainer of Kobe Bryant and Dwayne Wade holds a very similar belief.
All right, it's too simplistic. It is very simplistic, but you're building the foundation. When you play basketball, you play football, you play baseball, you play soccer, whatever you play, when you get hit, when you jump, when you land, there's no pulleys, there's no cables. Your body weight is the metal. You have to learn how to explode with it, and you also need to learn how to land with it and how to stop it. And that's what metal does. It teaches you to lift it, but it also teaches you to put it down.
Former NBA athletes across the world have similar beliefs.
You don't condition yourself to run a marathon. If you don't condition yourself to run a marathon, it becomes very, very hard to run a marathon. There are players that are actively deconditioning themselves, making it harder to do 82 games. I'm not going to talk about how I played 82 games, then went to the finals and came back and played 80 games and went to the NBA finals, did 2 summer league. All of that can be done, but you have to condition your body. If you're only playing 10 games and then you take 5 days off, you play another 10 games, and I'm going to keep talking until this red light goes off.
No, okay, I got you.
Okay, thank you.
The only people that seem to believe the contrary is NBA physicians, who should get the benefit of the doubt. Logically, load management does make sense, and scientifically, there are numerous studies that support its effectiveness. Except that's not true, that last part specifically. The consensus on the effectiveness of load management in the scientific community is murky at best. I found just as many studies that show a negative correlation between it and player health as a positive correlation. But Sweatshop Manager, I hear you asking, if that's the case, then why have these practices been adopted by some of the smartest people in the league? Well, my dear friend, that I believe can be traced back to 2 specific cases. You see, the NBA as we know it is a copycat league. If one thing works for someone else, then other teams will try to replicate it no matter how much it makes sense for their team. And I think this is true in this situation as well. I think the league as a whole has looked at the first 2 documented load management cases, the beautiful game Spurs and Kawhi Leonard on the Toronto Raptors, saw their success and thought, oh, if they're winning doing that, then that's what we should all be doing, right? Not taking into account the very unique situations both teams were in. In both of these situations, the organizations had very real reason to believe that no matter how much training their players did, they weren't going to be able to sustain their health for a full 82-game season. Load management was originally meant for old or injury-prone players, but now the league has tried to apply it to everybody. And I think both the science and the evidence show that that's not what it's meant for. Load management is being overused. Load management is being abused. Load management is harming player safety. And practice is the only thing that can fix it. With that, thank you for watching this video all the way through, ladies and gentlemen. We greatly appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, why don't you go ahead and like and subscribe? We got a lot more cool stuff coming down the pipe, and we would love for you to be here to enjoy it. Comment down below what you think about my arguments, if you agree, if you disagree. Share the video with a friend, and as always, stay sweaty, ladies and gentlemen. Peace.